hop right into it. So thank you again for everyone tuning into us from Eventbrite. We do quick introductions, logistics, and then get into the coaching. So we are Ama La Vida. We are a life, health and wellness, leadership, and career coaching company. And my name is Justice, and I am a relationship strategist here on the team. And what that means is when you're ready to have a conversation with someone on our team, when you're ready to have a conversation with someone on our team, you meet with someone on my team's calendar, and we have a half-hour conversation where we ask deeper questions to get to know more about you, what are the obstacles in your way, what your goals are, and then hopefully by the end of that half hour, we've been able to successfully pair you up with one or multiple coaches on our team that are most qualified to suit you and your goals. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and drop the calendar link to my calendar right now in case anyone has anything front of mind they would like to share. My calendar is first come, first serve, and anybody who comes to us from a webinar gets their first session free. So that's something to consider when you are thinking about budgeting for something like coaching. And with that being said, here are a little bit of how this is going to work. So we're going to ask everyone in the room to raise your hand, a little Zoom icon if you look over by towards the bottom. Yep, perfect. Thank you, Playa. So if you raise your hand, we will call on someone, and then we ask you to come off of mute and turn on your camera if you're comfortable doing so. And we're going to try to prioritize people that will be on camera more so, because that's kind of what a full session of coaching is actually like. And so we will do that. And then also, if you're not comfortable with coming off of mute or on camera, please feel free to write your questions in the chat box, and we will go back to those and grab those at the end if we don't have some more time and no one's left to come on. With that being said, we have Coach Shari with us today. Shari, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
I'm Coach Shari. I'm a career and leadership coach here at Ama La Vida. I coach up and down the coaching spectrum, which means I will coach you through from exploration all the way through tactical pieces in order to make that career transition or elevate your leadership. I work with all ages, all genders, all however you identify. I will be happy to chat with you about where you are in your career and your leadership. And I love to see so many people, so I can't wait to do this. So let's rock.
Let's do it. So give me 1 second. Oops. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay.
And then I'm going to spotlight you, Shari.
Yay.
Awesome. So with this being said, does someone want to raise their hand and go first? We have a lucky volunteer.
Do we have any volunteers? While someone's getting ready to go, we'll talk a little bit about confidence in the workplace in general today, which can range from those first day jitters all the way up and through, those last day jitters. How do I exit gracefully and everything in between? So whoever would love to ask a question, I'm happy to coach you through some pieces that you may be having to talk about in your workspace. Little bonus tip, sometimes what makes you feel more confident today when we're working, especially if you're working remotely, is changing up your space every now and again. That just refreshes you, makes you feel better about where you're at, especially if you are at home full time, so you don't leave your space that frequently. Just switching it up, maybe moving the desk around, maybe getting a new pen if you like to write with certain kinds of pens, if you write at all, keyboard cover, just little things, a poster, put something in your eye line that makes you feel better. That will boost your confidence during the day. Those are small little things that you can do that don't take a lot of effort just to make you feel better, and you can do them frequently. So, you don't have to build yourself a new home office every 3 months, but it's okay to get some flowers or move your desk around or get a new chair or any of those things. I'm a Planet Fitness pen person because they write purple, and I think that's fun. So even though I'm not actually a fitness person, I pre-pandemic would go to Planet Fitness primarily to get my pen so that I would have a good Planet Fitness pen to write with.
For those of you that are not aware where the raise hand feature may be, it lives under the reaction section towards the bottom of your screen. If you click that, and then there's a little raise hand icon right there. So if anybody's struggling to find that, that is how you do see that. I know we had a couple at the beginning that went down. If you do still have those, let me know. Put your hand back up so we can get you on screen with Shari. But we did just have one come through in the chat box. So Sharon, I will read it to you.
Absolutely.
I am in my office and surrounded by colleagues, so prefer not to come off mute or camera, but do have a question. Hoping to make a career transition soon and know that I will need to negotiate my salary. Any tips on having confidence when doing this and holding your ground while showing why you are worth what you are seeking?
Okay, so when you're career transitioning, a big important part of negotiation in any stance, whether you're doing an internal promotion or you are transitioning into something new, would be to really know what your negotiables and your not negotiables are. What that gives you is your foundation to have that conversation. So if money is your driver, if vacation's your driver, if different parts of PTO, professional development, any of the things, typically what I really recommend doing is creating a list for yourself. All of the things that are important to you and then rate them in level of negotiability so you know what your priorities are before you go in. With that, you also want to have some sense of what your bottom lines are. And when I say bottom line, I don't just mean money, because sometimes everyone has a different driver. So if you're looking for a title or a start date or professional development money, or you want a tiered payment plan, or whatever it is that you want, know what pieces you're willing to walk away from, and at what point you're willing to walk away from the offer, so that it's a true negotiation. Something else that's important, especially for your dollars, is know what's the going rate. If you think you're worth a bajillion dollars, that's fantastic, and I'm not doubting that you are, but if the company is only willing to pay $10 for that, you can negotiate from today till tomorrow. That gap is too wide typically to breach. So what's being utilized as a number in your space? There's PayScale, there's salary.com. United States Department of Labor puts out a piece that talks about salaries in terms of experience level, where you live geographically. That all helps very much so that you can have a good sense of what you may ask for. Then from there, how much more can you go up based upon what you're bringing to the table in terms of impact, value, and contribution. Next step overall would be practice, practice, practice out loud, so that your mouth gets used to the words that you want to use, that you feel comfortable with that. So when you're going in to have this conversation or negotiating, whether you're doing it by video or face-to-face, that you have the language that you want to use and it comes in as confident. My little equation for this is comfortability with your content equals confidence. And that's why you do it out loud, because when we practice stuff in our heads, it's always perfect. At least mine is always perfect, and research shows that most of us are perfect because we don't mispronounce in our head. We don't stutter. We don't take funny breaths in our head. We sound awesome. When you practice out loud, put yourself on Zoom, record yourself, do it on your phone. You can hear the different cadence. You can hear where your breath is catching. You can hear where you don't say something correctly. It comes out as a question instead of a statement. And all of those things change how it comes across to the other person. Another thing in order to keep your value up is keep what we call a brag book. So keep that going the whole time that you're working. Anytime someone sends you a note of how great you did on something, if you see a result of something, especially if you have hard numbers, start compiling that. So when you go to negotiations, you can say, hey, listen, at my last job, I drove revenue over 50% by doing X, Y, Z. Here's how I did it. I'd really like to do that for you. So those are some basic pieces to do in that space. Original poster, did I answer your question? Do you need clarification on anything? Justice, let me know. And then I thank you, incredibly helpful. I just saw that popped on my screen, so yay, okay.
All right, and we do have a hand up. Clea, I mean, I see the cover off of mute. If you're comfortable coming on camera, that'd be great. But if not, we respect that. Whatever you would like to do.
So Shari, that was a great share, and I just wanted to kind of piggyback on that. And the numbers may have changed in the last 5 years when this initially was told to me, but 90% of men negotiate salary. Only 10% of women will come to the table and negotiate, and that has a lot to do with the confidence which you just talked about, and knowing how to ask and what to ask for. So I'm just going to share, after I was told that, that just kind of gave me that fire in the belly to say, no matter what my offers are going to be, I will always negotiate. And it helped me in obtaining the position I'm in now. They were not, I kind of came back to the offer and I just said, okay, if I will definitely accept. However, I'm asking for such and such as my salary. And if that can't be met, then I would like an additional 2 weeks of paid time off. And they were able to match that. So there's always a way, but you have to come with that confidence, like you mentioned, and you have to come from a place of knowing your worth. And I think a lot of times men are built to believe that they are the breadwinners and they are all of that. And women are getting into the field and, you know, not really knowing where they stand. And it's okay to negotiate. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I think this is a great question and a great answer, and I just had to share it.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. And to add further to that, Playa, is typically those who identify as women also will leave about 25% of what the company would be willing to give on the table, because they don't tend to negotiate in general, and they don't realize that there's more to negotiate other than salary. So you make a great point there as well. Additionally to that, adding to the confidence piece, just as a general rule, when people who identify as male apply for a job, if they check one box, they will tend to send resume or do an outreach and figure it out on the fly. Those who identify as female or non-binary will tend to not apply for a position unless they check every single box. So that also is something to keep in mind if you're career transitioning. It's okay. Job descriptions are written as a general idea of what the company may want. When they find that right person, things may change. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to try. You may bring something to the table for them that is far more valuable than what they put in the job description. So don't forget to do those things too.
Thank you so much for that, Shari. And then additionally, for people that are just now joining us, this is a live coaching hour. So if you have a question for Shari, if you raise your hand, you can come up and ask that to her directly. Otherwise, we welcome questions in the chat box that we are going through as well. We have another question. How would you suggest people navigate perfectionist work cultures where confidence is sometimes affected by feeling frozen due to highly critical environments?
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to suggest is, Justice, please drop that consult link in the chat for everybody again. So that consult link that Justice is dropping in would be to get a consultation appointment with one of our relationship specialists, where they can match you with a coach who handles imposter syndrome and perfectionism. 100%, that's what they do most of the time. If you become a member, we have a special for people who sit in on the coaching hour. You ask for first session free and you get your first session free. I am now going to do my best to answer that question because I am not an expert in imposter syndrome. We have coaches on staff who are far more able than I am to talk to this. Now, with that, a couple of different things that you can do is whoever asked that question, you're on your first step, is that you acknowledge that you have some level of imposter syndrome, some level of perfectionism, and can work through figuring out which pieces are which and talk to that person within yourself. Oftentimes we recommend naming it. So give it a name. That way it takes the pressure off yourself that it's not you, and you can separate out some of those feelings, which is a nice way to say, okay, I know I have to deal with you. I call mine Sam. I know I have to deal with Sam, but right now I'm going to deal with what I'm dealing with right now. So if I'm applying for a position or I'm not sure of what's happening, I deal with what's in front of me, and I try to ignore what Sam's telling me all the time. Sometimes I'll reverse it and I'll say to Sam, why do you feel that way? Why, Sam, do you think we can't do that? Look at our resume. Look at our accomplishments. Look at our impact. Look at our value. Look at our contribution. Look what we can bring. And from separating out, almost dehumanizing some of those pieces, you have better recognition on what you do bring that is of value to where you're at and doesn't have to be just what Sam thinks it should be. Another exercise that works really well is writing yourself a dear fear letter. Sounds a little funny, but it's dear fear of whatever I'm feeling. And then you write it a letter. I'm afraid of you because I think I won't be able to do this because in the past I've had a lot of criticism surrounding X, Y, Z. Then you take that letter and next to each thing that's your fear, you write something that you've done to combat that. Straight up, you know, so dear, I'm afraid because I've had some past criticism. So next to that piece, you might write, yes, but in the last year, I have excelled at this. I took a chance on this, just so that you can see where that balance sits for you. And oftentimes that helps boost your confidence. Very often, as you see it on paper, I'm a paper person or on your screen. I'm big into documenting where you're at. I find it's easier to see in black and white, and then I'm not thinking in my head who it is. Oftentimes when I put it on paper, I can look at it much more objectively, and that helps me look back at it. Another exercise I do with myself, my own coach gives me this one, and I use it with almost all of my clients, is what would you tell, insert your best friend's name here. We as friends are awesome at giving advice. We know the right answer almost all of the time and quickly. We don't apply it back to ourselves, especially when we're in perfectionism mode or lack of confidence and we think we're not good enough and we're doubting our value. We'll spend a lot of time thinking, well, we're different. That doesn't apply to us. If you separate that out and say, if my friend came to me and asked me this same thing, what would I tell her, him, they to do? Apply it back to yourself. We usually have good instincts and good answers. Again, I'm going to ask the same question. Did I answer what was asked? And did I answer it enough? Or are there some follow-up questions in that space?
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry that I can't be on camera right now. I have a no camera day on my calendar. So
No problem.
I think you did approach a lot of it. I guess I was also sort of, thinking about like, the workspace itself where, I'm, obviously aware and trying to name sort of where I am. And, I would just say I'm a little bit middle to early in my career. And so I think, I'm aware that there may be some imposter syndrome that I'm experiencing, and obviously I'm on this call because I've been, sort of engaged with Ama La Vida as well, with, interested in coaching and things like that. But I guess I'm wondering about like the work culture itself, like where it could become a place where, it's not just you, but like the perfectionism is coming for sort of externally and sort of where criticism, which is fair, some of it may be a bit beyond that, sort of also contributes to that feeling of, being frozen or paralyzed to act, or feeling sort of like, specifically in my space, I work in communications, and often there's a lot of navigating that I have to do with leadership when it comes to best practices and things like that. So I'm often sort of reframing things for them. And I think I've been struggling a little bit with whether or not this is these are leaders that are being open and receptive and are just challenging me, or if they're sort of closing me down a little bit and are not sort of moving in the way that I'm suggesting, and if it's sort of like a culture question, if that makes sense.
Okay,
Absolutely. Yeah, sorry.
Absolutely. And thank you for clarifying. I appreciate that. And I love that you have a no camera day. That's fantastic. Everyone put that on your calendars, no camera day. So in the workspace where you may see a few different things, and I'm not exactly sure which one will play without spending a little bit more time digging into this with you. One thing is for yourself is to set expectations of how you like to be communicated to. That way you're letting your leadership know how you take in information and how you can respond to it. That helps them to know how to give you your feedback. And is it feedback? Is it criticism? Sometimes even asking that same question back out. Hey, how do you like to receive your information? Helps give you some sense of what's acceptable, what is best practices. Are they just giving you lip service? So those are a couple of, that's a couple of ways to see what the culture is like there. If you could find a mentor on site to give you some guidance strictly internally, that also helps. And feeling your way through, hey, this worked, hey, this didn't work, and the figuring out the why behind that. Transparent communication with your boss is huge. If you could set that up so that you have that safe space to have that conversation, you also may be able to get some more feedback in that space. I am going to go back to know the kind of work you're doing, know how to tell your story so that you can constantly be tooting your own horn. And I'm hearing the way that's sounding, and I don't mean it like just walk around bragging all the time, but be able to be clear when, hey, I've had a good idea, and I want you to know that I've had this good idea, and I recognize the impact that it's had. Also, there's value to knowing when to pick a battle and say, you know what, this isn't worth it. I've done what I can do here. I am not in control of this situation. I didn't create this situation. So I'm going to do what I can do that's in my own power.
All right. Thank you so much, Shari. We have the next question we have, unless someone, again, hands up are always welcome and encouraged. We have a question that says, I am a Scrum Master. Any tips for confidently conducting one-to-one with developers?
Can you tell me that question one more time? I'm sorry.
Yes, I am a Scrum Master. Any
Okay.
tips for confidently conducting a 1-to-2-to-1 with developers?
I'm going to ask this person to, I don't know what a 1-to-2-to-1 is. Is that just a one-on-one with more people? Please, whoever asked that question, clarify for me. I'm happy to answer it, but maybe you're using terminology I'm not familiar with.
That was a typo. I meant one-to-one.
Okay, a one-on-one. Okay, good. That's what I recognize. So I'm glad that you did. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like with anything else, being comfortable with your content is almost always going to be the answer to any question anyone's going to ask today, first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
But second of all, whether it's developers or anybody else, going in with a plan. So you don't just go into a one-on-one with, so what do you want to talk about today? Setting expectations with whoever you're talking to is very helpful to help you stay confident, because that gives you the opportunity to architect the way the conversation is going to take place. That gives you the power to then say, that's not on our agenda today, but let's note it so we can talk about it next time, or set a second time to talk about this. What I'd really like to talk about today is XYZ 1, 2, 3. We have here, Justice, if you wouldn't mind for follow-up, the one-on-one template. If you wouldn't mind, please noting somewhere. We have a one-on-one template that we give to clients on the regular here that is a very, very simple process, but it keeps your thought process moving. And it gives you an opportunity for you to speak, an opportunity for the person who you're meeting with to speak, handle roadblocks or challenges, and then have a little bit of even personal development time to chat. That way you can cover a lot of different spaces in a short amount of time, because you can keep the conversation moving and everybody knows what to expect each time. So setting the expectations of what that one-on-one is going to look like, what you're covering, being comfortable with your content will always give you more confidence. And again, empowering you to say, hey, that's not what we're talking about today. Happy to set up another time to do it with you, but today we're covering this. Obviously, when we're in the workforce, we need to have a little bit of flexibility, because sometimes crisis comes up and we do have to handle on the fly. If it's a case like that, especially when you're dealing in the development space, people need answers quickly. You could set up a space in your morning or your afternoon as a stand-up time, right? Between 10 and 10:30 in the morning, I'm stand-up time. Anyone who needs to come for a quick answer can meet me then. Again, you're in charge of that time and space. And that's a lot of times what's helpful is when you're feeling empowered to do that with enough space to have people answer you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So
All right, let's
the
get
next
going.
the next one says, I'm not familiar with imposter syndrome. Can you give a brief overview of what that is?
Absolutely. I'm so sorry that I used a term that you aren't familiar with. Imposter syndrome is almost exactly what it sounds like. It's when you feel like you may be the imposter in any one given situation. Almost like you're faking it. And the people who you're working with think you're doing this great job, but you know you're just flying by the seat of your pants or faking it, or you think you are. Very often we're not. Many people experience it across the board in different areas, and it's different things that will bring it up. Some people are, the person earlier was talking about having perfectionism, which is everything has to be perfect all of the time. There's all different types of imposter syndrome. If you want, head over to our blog, alvcoaching.com blog. Lots of really good blog posts about imposter syndrome, the different types of imposter syndrome, and how to befriend your inner imposter, which gives you some really good mechanisms and strategies for dealing with imposter syndrome. And again, don't forget, always you can hop on with Justice and his team and talk to a coach who has much higher levels of expertise in imposter syndrome than I do. I have some base levels there. I hope that answered the question for whoever asked. And let's
Next we have a comment that goes back to the perfectionist question. It says, I've had a similar environment where there was much criticism, but no real guidance or communication on how they want something done. It was only afterwards.
So whoever said that, I am so sorry for you that you had to live through that. That's a very passive aggressive way of your leadership to deal with you, because it leaves you wanting. That's a case where you can take control of that situation and ask follow-up questions that are considered open-ended. So what that means is that it's not a question that can be answered with yes or no. So if you say to your leadership, is this how you want it? And the answer is yes, you have nowhere to go from there. So this is a case where if you're not getting the feedback, you can ask for feedback by asking questions that have to be answered by something other than a yes or no. I'm considering tackling this challenge by doing A, B, C, D, E. Which one of those do you think will be most successful? They have to pick one. And that opens conversation so you can elicit your own feedback in a different way without getting it directly. And then listening to the answer and repeating it back. So what I'm hearing you say is you would like me to go with C because you think that's going to drive traffic to the website in a quicker fashion. That's a yes or no question. But if it's no, then your follow-up question is, okay, well then what do you think I can do to improve? So it's this back and forth with questions, again, to take the person to force an answer that isn't a yes or no answer so that you can get more information. This is hard to do when you're being criticized regularly. Again, practice. And I mean that, practice talking to people, practice asking questions and getting answers. And instead of walking away if you don't like the answer, practice asking a different way. It's okay to acknowledge, hey, I'm not comfortable with what you just said. Here's what I'm looking for. And over time, you should be able to get different responses from those people. And if not, it might be time to transition to a place where it's going to align better with what your value set is and how you like to be communicated to. Remembering, everyone likes to be communicated differently, and some styles that don't work for you may work for others. So it's not an across the board, hey, this place stinks, because it just might not work for you. What else do we got?
Thank you, Shari. Any advice on being confident in establishing personal/time boundaries when colleagues and leaders send communication, often urgent and last minute, after work, on weekends, during vacations, via email or text, etc.?
Oh boy, that is probably everybody on this call could raise their hand and talk to this. So setting expectations is a very hard but necessary thing to do. Again, hard to do it with lack of confidence because you're wondering, what is everyone else doing? Am I doing something different? Am I going to be looked upon funny? Start with outlining what those boundaries are for you, which ones are important, which ones you want to adhere to, which ones you're willing to give on. Once you've established what that needs to look like for yourself, and again, I'm a fan of writing this stuff down because that's just how I process. So everyone, I'm giving you my best practices. You do what works for you. I like to have things on paper where I can look on screen where I can look at them in a written format. So for me, it's what are my boundaries? What's important boundaries? Where do I make the exceptions? Are there people I'm willing to make the exceptions for on the regular? And that's okay. I don't want, people tend to think they have to set a boundary and that's it for everybody. You have different relationships with different people in your workspace. While you may not want your senior leadership to reach you on the weekend, you may have no problem with a colleague reaching out on the weekend if you're working on something together. So just think that way too. It's not an all or nothing. You can have different levels of what your boundaries are going to be set at. So you're going to want to set what those boundaries are and then communicate them very clearly. Hey, I get paid to work here for 40 hours a week. I understand I'm not an hourly worker, but I am not contracted to you for 24/7. Therefore, from 7 o'clock on in the evening, I'm only going, I will answer texts that are urgent. Turn off your notification. But you need to communicate it clearly and you need to be consistent with what you're doing. That is something that we're seeing in the workplace is taking some time to change because you also have different alignments of value of what's acceptable and what isn't. Understanding that in most workplaces, you tend to not be hourly workers, so it's the job has to get done. There is a limit to what that looks like in terms of what your life looks like. We're all looking for a reasonable work-life integration. That doesn't look the same for everybody. Some people work a split day. They like to be up early in the morning and work. They take the afternoon it's not good time for them. They have childcare, they have a dog, they have an illness, that's just when they don't want to work. There's no reason for them to tell you. And then they work again in the evening. There are some places that are, hey, it's 9 to 5. Hey, you have to be on call 24/7. So it goes back to before you're in that workspace, what are the expectations of that job? You need to ask to get clear, what are you expecting of me? Then it's up to you as a worker to come back and say, hey, that isn't acceptable to me. Let's now have a conversation. What am I willing to do? What am I not willing to do? And it's again, one of the harder conversations to have because you want to do a good job. You want to be seen as having value and being an asset to where you're working. But you also want to have what life integration works for you. And that, again, that looks different for people. That's why I'm not using the term work-life balance, because for some people, it's not a balance. 50-50 doesn't work for everybody. Some people prefer to work. They'd rather work 70% and have their personal time at 30%. Some people would like the opposite. So you need to find out what the expectation is of your role in the workplace. Figure out what boundaries you want to set, what boundaries you're willing to change on, and then communicate it clearly and consistently. And it is then okay if you've said, hey, I don't answer the phone after 7 o'clock unless it's an emergency, and the people who might need me in an emergency know how to get me. When they do, then you need to respond. But otherwise, you don't have to answer every text and every Slack and every email if you've set that boundary.
Thank you so much, Shari. Next, we have, how do you keep yourself engaged at work, especially when you notice yourself disengaging?
Okay, we don't have enough time to answer that one so fully, but I will do the very best that I can. How do you engage when you feel yourself disengaging? I'm going to say first and foremost, are you taking care of yourself? Oftentimes, if we're disengaging, it's because we're not doing something for ourselves that we need to. So first, I would take a look at that behavior. Am I glued to my computer 24/7? Am I in one room the whole time? Am I scheduling breaks for myself? Am I getting answers that I need in order to do my job well? Why am I disengaging? That would be the first spot I would start. What is making me disengage? Or am I bored? Am I bored? Am I not getting the projects that I want? And each of those things require a little bit of a different approach, right? If you're not taking care of yourself, first things first, take care of yourself. When we are not being cared for, we'll tend to disengage in most things. So look at that behavior. Are you disengaging just at work? Are you disengaging across the board? Are you not well? What's happening there? And put that first into perspective. Then second, what's changed at work that's creating the disengagement for you? Again, is it work-based? Have you been taken off a project that you liked? Has your job changed? Did your boss change? Did a coworker change? What's the root cause of that disengagement? Once you figure out what that root cause looks like and feels like, then there's strategies around fixing and changing it. It's as simple sometimes as a conversation with senior leadership. And sometimes it's, hey, time to put my resume together and start networking, or take my network off Simran and rock and roll in that space. If you have a nice, safe space with your boss or your senior leadership where you can have that conversation, sometimes it's just a little course correction or a little tweak in what you're doing at work that will get you re-engaged. And how to ask for that for yourself. And it, again, starts with that clear communication, setting those expectations, feeling comfortable with what you want to say to somebody, because that always comes out with more confidence. Whenever you are unsure, it's read that way. And that's when I go back to practice out loud. And I know everybody doesn't like that. They don't like the sound of their voice. They don't like to practice having a conversation with somebody. But preparation is so key to building confidence. Bonus tip, before you go into any conversation that may feel difficult for you, that you're not feeling as confident in, I don't know if people are familiar with the power posing. A lot of people like power posing, and that's exactly what it sounds like. Put yourself in a power pose. Some people put their hands on their hips, shoulders back, chest out. Some people arms over their head. Something that makes you feel empowered to move forward. So my favorite one when I do it, and I don't do them often because they're not as effective for me in certain cases, but when I need to do it, mine is a total superhero pose. I put my hands on my hips, put my shoulders back, and put my face up to where there's always wind blowing, which blows my hair and my cape. And I feel like I'm like, yep, got it. I got it. I'm good. So if that's something you've not put into practice for yourself, try a little power posing. Just get up from your, turn on, have a no camera day, turn off your camera, stand up, little power pose, come back. So sometimes that would be really helpful. Have a theme. I just saw in the chat popped up. Have a theme tune. Whoever put that in, what's yours? Share. What's your theme? Not sharing? Okay.
And then we have another comment that goes, in exempt positions, there are no protections for the worker. There's an expectation to get the job done, whatever it takes, even if it includes weekends and vacations. So this can be very difficult for boundary setting, 100%.
100%. And that's where you have to actually figure out, that's where that expectation piece comes in, right? Very many of us are in exempt positions. That does not mean that you can't set a boundary and have a clear understanding of what your expectation is. If your senior leadership's expectation is, well, you have to do whatever it is to get the job done to the detriment of anything else you have in your life, if that's okay with you, fine. If it isn't okay with you, then you need to set what that expectation is, or you need to be compensated for that, because there are limits. Nobody is hired to work 24/7. That's just not how that's not how our workforce works. There is an expectation of what you will work. You should get it when you get hired. You can always have conversations around it. I understand that it's when to get the job done, which means sometimes you have to break your own boundary. Hey, here's something I owe somebody at work. And while I don't really want to work at 9 o'clock at night, this is still due to them and I made a commitment. So sometimes I might have to do that every now and again. There's a difference between every now and again and working from 6 in the morning until 2 o'clock in the morning every day. That's not a realistic expectation from an employer, especially if it doesn't align again with what your value set is. So it may be time to gain that confidence and have that conversation, or again, get on the horn. First sesh free, talk to a relationship specialist here, get paired with a coach who can walk you through career exploration and career transition, because this doesn't sound like a good culture for anybody, not even just you, but honestly for anybody. So I know it can be very, very difficult.
And then Shari, while we get some people, because it looks like we've ran out of questions in the chat for the moment, but while we give some people some time to think through anything else they might want to talk about, we're going to do a special little offer, a little plug for our next event we have next week, our upcoming webinar. So next week we have our pivot, our 10 steps to transition your career with Coach Brooke. That is going to be a live masterclass, and some things you can expect to walk away with, and what you should be thinking about when considering career change, how to approach this process strategically and systematically, and tactics to help you navigate the overwhelming process with confidence. So if you have any interest and are considering a transition of yourself, I'm going to go ahead and drop that chat or the link to that right there for you. So feel free to register for that. And once again, attending that and coming, you get that first session free when considering joining coaching. So something to consider. Shari, do you have anything else you want to add on about the pivot upcoming webinar that you think might be good to notate?
Yeah, no, I do. First of all, I'm not sure that everyone heard you say this. Justice, this is a free masterclass. So what you're getting is a solid hour of proprietary information, and Brooke is awesome at putting it out there for you and keeping it really digestible. So if you're thinking of a career pivot and you're thinking about how coaching might be able to support you, or how we recommend ALV best practices to do that, I would absolutely sign up. It's unusual that you're getting this kind of content for free. And she, like I said, she's awesome at it. And I know I saw Justice drop the link somewhere. Get registered. That's gonna be a biggie. I think it's August. I'm gonna check right now because I'm looking at it.
It's Thursday, August 4th.
Yeah.
Yep. Same time on Thursday.
Yeah, you're going to want to get into that. Brooke is amazing. She's an amazing coach, and she takes you through very quickly what you're looking for. So there are great foundational pieces for you to start your coaching journey. So I would not miss that. Excuse me.
And then additionally, if anyone looking to get in touch, you can reach out to Shari or myself directly. I'm also going to drop my contact link one final time, as well as the link to our website where you can see about some of the other coaches we have on staff, learn a bit more about us as a company. We can kind of go from there. Additionally, also, for those of you who are interested in other resources we have, I'm dropping the link to our YouTube channel, which has our previous webinars, as well as our Eventbrite, which is the upcoming webinars that we do have, in addition to Brooks next week. So I believe we scheduled about 1 to 2 months out. So we got quite a lot of them on the books coming up. So feel free to jump on anywhere you need. And then with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And it looks like Playa has something that she would like to mention real quick. So Playa, the floor is yours.
Hey again, Shari. I had a little situation, and so just a small tidbit. I am in a leadership role, and so trust and coaching and all of that is something I do on a daily basis, whether it's on the spot or a formal coaching session or, mid-year review, annual reviews, those types of things. But this has to do with my senior leadership. And there was a situation, and it was a really small request that ended up getting very nasty for whatever reason with my leadership. And I caught my senior leader in a fib, which I very eloquently and professionally addressed. Okay. And of course, this person did not like the fact that I caught them in that situation. And what they said, what they're saying going forward, I did win the battle. I was able to go ahead and get the request not only acknowledged, but approved. But now my trust with the leadership is kind of shaky. And I know the standard that I hold myself to as a leader to my team. And God forbid anybody ever felt that way about me. I am just now questioning, things that they're saying, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like a bad marriage, after you get lied to, you're like, do I stay? What do I do? What is your suggestion? As I go forward? Of course, I am not a quitter. I'm somebody that's going to continue to do what I do and how I do it. But how would you handle that or leave it be? You know what I mean? Like, what do you do?
So, Playa, I'm not a leave it be girl, just as a general rule. So just know that my coaching comes from that place. I'm not typically a leave it be person. If I feel that my trust has been destroyed. Before I answer that, let me ask you, are you looking to leave or are you looking to stay? Because that makes the strategy slightly different.
I'm looking to stay.
You're looking to stay. Okay. So if you're looking to stay, is your trust eroded with all of leadership or just a few people?
Just the two direct ones over me.
Okay. And do you one-on-one with them regularly?
The one is my direct boss. The one is my boss's boss. And that's the one that I caught in the misinformation.
That's the way we change the words now. Okay.
Yeah.
How often do you have a skip level with him, her, they?
Really never. This person only likes to communicate through my manager. So, yeah.
So this gives you the opportunity to look for opportunities to find trustworthy spaces with your skip level, even if they're coming through your boss. It may even be easier to find them coming through your boss because then you don't have to do the one-on-one confrontation with your skip. Meaning without knowing your business, if there's something that's coming through your boss, maybe this is an opportunity to over deliver and under promise to the skip monitor response. Maybe this is your opportunity to ask for a skip level if something has come through your boss that you want to discuss face to face. Watch body language, watch those nonverbals, watch for the results.
And that's actually how that conversation went down. After I spoke with my manager about it, she kind of gave me the blessing. If you want to take this up with this person, absolutely, contact her, whatnot. And so I did. And so we had this one-on-one session, and the tone after I addressed that, from what I understand, that is not true. This person became very obviously defensive. And then the terminology that was used, I disrespected her authority. That's the mentality there, and I never do that professionally. I actually said to this person, the person's name, and I said, I'm going to pause you for a moment because what you're saying is absolutely not the fact. These are the facts. And that confidence, because I knew the facts, you're absolutely right. That kind of led the whole thing. But 30 days forward now, I got my request approved. She has not been the one to communicate that to me. It was very third person that the approval came through. Should I expect her to come back? Should I initiate the conversation? Should I just let the sleeping dog lie at this point? That's the issue, because there's going to be communication, I'm sure.
What's the, for me, I would think through the different scenarios and what the impact that it's going to have on your immediate job, right? So if your request was approved, just because that person didn't communicate it to you, does that impact other things? And that's for me where I would play that decision. If this is a one-off and you whatever, caught on a bad day, it was a poor decision on her part or their part, and there's no impact going forward to let it lie, because it doesn't behoove you and does nothing for you. If it is going to impact you moving forward in terms of communication with your boss, the skip level, and then your team, because this is an unresolved thing, then you need to have that hard conversation very transparently. But it really depends on the impact it's going to make. If it's just something that's sticking in your craw that you really feel like you have to have that conversation about, write said personal letter and seal it and do not mail it. If you just need to get the words out, then do so and just don't share with that person. If it's something that you think is going to have an impact on your workplace, let human resources know, or ask for a meeting between human resources, yourself and your skip, to air this and come up with moving forward process and strategy so it doesn't happen again. I would think through that. Where does this make a difference in terms of moving forward and in a place I want to stay?
Very good. Very good. And just so you know, I did indirectly have a conversation with my human resource person, just because I did not like that terminology and the tone and obviously the entire situation over something that was very minute, in the grand scheme of things. So I appreciate that. And I think I will let this one lie, so to speak. Thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Thank you so much, Leah. And it looks as though we have one more question in the chat, and that'll probably wrap us up here. So I've had issues with misogyny at a past workplace. I'm a female and I have had a male boss and male coworkers assume I'm being defensive when I'm simply responding to them in convo. I noticed that this comment was never made to my male counterparts. Any advice on how to clearly communicate this issue?
Whoever just asked that question first, we're going to take a deep breath, so that we don't say something that we don't want to say, not because we're hysterical people, but because we're professional work people and we want to make sure that we're staying professional. So after we do that, this goes back to confidently talking about expectations. It is okay to respond to that. I am not being defensive. I am responding to you in conversation. I am not being defensive. I am responding to this conversation. This is something that takes calmness and consistency to get this message across. This is a tough one because in general, as human beings, this is something that'll be irksome, and it's just going to be like annoying, water torture that you're going to feel the need to at some point explode. You just need to keep your messaging very consistent, that you're not being defensive. Sometimes you can even follow it up on paper in an email or a conversation with your boss after the fact, and you can even bring up your observations. I noticed that nobody else in the meeting ever gets told that they're being defensive. I'm not being defensive. My communication style is to respond to the conversation. Again, calm, consistent messaging. Again, if it's not something that changes, it's okay to bring HR in, or at least lodge what your feelings are so that it could be monitored to be sure that you're not in a situation that takes it past just what I'm going to refer to as mansplaining and not going into any kind of harassment situation there. For whoever asked this question, there's a big difference between those things. Another way to handle this is you take a deep breath and you repeat back what you heard. Before I answer, I want to make sure I heard you correctly. Repeat back what you heard. That gives those male counterparts the opportunity to clarify what they said to you so that you can then answer immediately without being defensive or without being seen as defensive, because you're answering back to what they've just reclarified. This is whoever asked this is a long process. This is not a quick fix. It can take months and months to get this to change. Following up with that expectation in an email sometimes is very helpful. I am not being defensive. I am just replying to the conversation, and then you can follow up by email. Hey, just wanted to, and I hate to use this kind of terminology, but hey, just wanted to close the loop on this. When we came out of the meeting, here's what I understood. Very depersonalized, having nothing to do with how you identify for your gender. Straight up workplace. I hope that was helpful, and whoever talked to that, I am sorry that you're needing to deal with it, and please be patient with yourself. Take deep breaths if you need to, because this is a space where you need to have that sense of chill and calm while you're doing this over and over until it hits home. And we can practice. But I hate to go back to this. Practice that out loud. Practice detaching and saying that calmly without any emotional tone that you're not invested, just it's a workplace. I'm not being defensive. I'm just answering I'm answering your question. I'm just talking your conversation.
Thank you so much, Shari. We're at the top of the hour. Any last thoughts you'd like to give everyone here before we all part ways? Again, thank you everyone for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you at any future events we do have. But Shari, any final words on your side?
Absolutely. Couple of tips I want to drive home. Be comfortable with your content that makes you more confident. Practice, 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 practice out loud. Make sure you come to Brooke's event, the Pivot Masterclass, so helpful, and get on Justice's calendar. Relationship strategist team here is outstanding at placing you with the right coach, and this is the kind of work we do, plus, 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 when we have longer periods of time with our clients to dig deep and work through challenges you're having in the workplace.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day and weeks, and we hope to see you in the future.
Please reach out. Can't wait to see you.